So on the real estate news, the real estate front, now because we still have a minority liberal government is in place, but what does the real estate landscape look like? Because they do have some plans and ideas of how to, cool the market a bit. So I wanted to chat with that in our first segment. And then second segment, we're going to talk about some really interesting news that things have been flipped upside down when it comes to a mortgage is. So we will talk about that on second segment. Canada's Conservative Party leader, Erin O'Toole, had suggested that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had planned to create a tax on the sale of principal residences, citing that the Liberal Party's platform, that's what he was saying, but the proposed policy, which has also been the subject of inaccurate social media posts, is an anti-flipping tax aimed at preventing speculators from profiting off a red-hot housing market. And it is true, some people have bought a place, they've maybe put a pretty little fence in the front, making it look all, splash a paint job on it and make, $200,000-300,000. And some people have just held it for 2 months, 3 months, and flipped it for a couple $100,000 without doing anything. I mean, I'm throwing out numbers, but it's true that this has been happening.
Well, it has been, because I remember when we'd been in our house for a couple months, and you made that joke to me on the air. She said, "How would you like to make a couple $100,000?" And I went, "How?" And she goes, "We'll sell your house." And I'm not interested in moving yet.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's how much the market had changed in just a couple months, even here in Abbotsford.
So true. And all over like Facebook and everywhere, Twitter, that there's been posts. And one post claimed if you sell your principal residence, your home, today it is tax-free transaction, of course. That is about to end, it said. Our current government is proposing to eliminate this tax shelter. Well, you know how some stories you got to fact check and all that kind of stuff. But Canada's housing market, it has reached record highs. We all know that during the pandemic, and it's fueled in part by low interest rates, but supply and demand as well. But the Liberal Party, they put out this mention, but it was like, well, Justin Trudeau said, we will not do that. That was his answer when asked by the press. He said that is something we are not interested in doing. He also said in French, we're going to make sure that we protect home buyers. We're going to make sure that we protect those who have had their equity in their homes for many years for their retirement. We're not going to eliminate capital gains exceptions on primary residences. So Trudeau explained that his party would establish a measure against house flipping by imposing a tax on the resale of homes within 12 months, and that's the key. Unless the seller experiences a significant change in life circumstances such as divorce. So they're going to establish an anti-flipping tax on residential properties, requiring properties be held for at least 12 months. Now, it used to be it was only builders who built had, if they had to own it, live in it for a year. Otherwise, they would be subject to capital gains tax. So if you built your own home, you wanted to make sure you lived in it for a year. But now it's not just that. It's not just people building. It's anybody in their primary residence. They have to own it for 12 months first, unless some of the exemptions are, for example, pregnancy, if there's death, new jobs where they're forced to move, a divorce is mentioned, a disability. So there are some things that they will, look over. So it's, again, something to talk about with your accountant, but that was what they were talking about. Not just, you own your home for 10 or 12 or 15, 30 years, and all of a sudden you have to pay capital gains tax on it. Not so fair, right? But the purpose for that is to try to cool the market. So that's what they're saying. And to go with that, from CREA, which is our Canadian Real Estate Association, they put out a message, and I want to read this to everyone. They say the dust is settled on an election that did little to change the parliamentary makeup in Ottawa, of course, as the federal Liberals again take their seats as a minority government. So one of the cornerstone campaign issues was the housing crisis. But it's not a new issue. Many have argued there was little improvement under the previous government and are skeptical it will be any different under the new one. According to the Canadian Real Estate Association, the average price of a home in this country has gone up more than 50% over the past 5 years, and it's not slowing. So they point out that new policies that promise to discourage rent-evictions and demo-evictions, plus details of what they call a boutique, so we're talking Trudeau here, calls a boutique rent-to-own program, as well as the 2-year moratorium on foreign ownership, first proposed by the Conservatives, and how the Liberals intend to discourage home buying solely as an investment. So that's, a whole nother thing there. But however, he also flags that what he sees as a fundamental problem. None of the parties said out loud that if they're going to restore housing affordability for all, they need home prices to pause so that earnings can catch up and keep pace. We're currently on an escalator of rising home prices that's going up really quickly, but unless we stall the escalator, the politicians aren't going to be able to run down fast enough to restore affordability. And this is a report from Korea. Also, a professor of the University of British Columbia, Mr. Kershaw, this was a quote from him. He's from the University of British Columbia School of Population and Public Health, so he knows what he's talking about. In the 1970s, it took a typical young person 5 years of full-time work to save up for 20% down payment on an average price home, according to his research. Now it would take that same person 28 years in the Metro Vancouver area. And the key of affordability right now, what everyone has really gathered, and I've heard from many different people, it's the municipalities hold the key. So the overarching solution that's long been put forward and is being repeated more loudly by policy experts now is to saturate the market with more supply to try to catch the pace of demand and moderate prices. It makes sense. It's all about supply and demand. There's so much red tape with the local municipalities, though, and, of course, staffing and all that you have to go through as a developer, as a builder, and it's just so much. It's too slow of a system. So housing affordability has been a challenging situation. We don't see any relief in sight under the current trajectory. So we need to see a change in that. So what we're seeing is the result of multiple years of undersupply, and our government really hasn't focused on supply as an overall priority, and this is very important to do so. So that, pair that with 400,000 people a year moving to Canada under very intensive immigration targets. And so you got to look at everything that's happening, and we need more housing, and that will help affordability once we get more housing available for people to choose from. So that is the report and the trajectory of what it looks like, what's happening in real estate.
All right. Well, the election really didn't change a heck of a lot. That's what we're learning today.
Exactly. And they're talking about maybe lower insurance costs or tweaking the amortization rules might make a little bit easier for some people to get into ownership than it was before, but we really need more supply.
All right. Well, speaking of supply, we have to get to some words here from our sponsors. So we'll take a quick break. If people want more information about what you do as a realtor, where can they go?
MicheleCummins.ca.